Defend Our Democracy is launching a campaign for credible and meaningful electoral reform. The launch will see a presentation of a campaign toolkit as well as the live emailing of a video to parliamentarians explaining why the current electoral amendment bill is flawed. MPs are expected to vote on the bill later this month. Our reporter Natasha Phiri is, of course, following this story for us. A very good afternoon to you, Natasha. All right, talk to us then about the background of this bill, but also talk to us about what's happening so far.
Well, very good afternoon to you, Flo, and of course to our SABC viewers. You're quite correct. We just saw the launch there of the electoral reform campaign that just took place an hour or so ago, Flo. And of course, the Defend Our Democracy and various civil society organizations were actually present. This has been a long time coming, but if I'll just probably take you through a timeline of how we actually got here. Yeah. You would remember in 2020, during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, I specifically covered that landmark Concord ruling that ruled that independent candidates can now, contest in the national elections on a provincial and a national level. Of course, you would understand that last year the Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, then set up that media advisory panel, or rather the President actually, to actually help with the enactment of this bill. But it seems as if civil society organizations are not happy whatsoever with this bill. Remember that advisory committee, had suggested two reports. You had the minority reports and you had the majority reports. The majority reports, Flo, proposed a mixed constituency and proportional system as a minimum basis of electoral reform. And this system is very much like the local government elections that would allow the electorate to vote for parties on a proportional system and to vote for individuals as well. But it seems as if the Minister of Home Affairs has actually chosen the minority report, and of course that is not in favor of independent candidates. So for example, let's just say I'm an independent candidate and prior to the elections, Flo, I would need 8,000 signatures, whereas if you have your own political party, you would need 1,000 signatures. But just to talk to us more on this issue, we're joined by Lukhona Mnguni, who's from Rivonia Circle, and he'll just take us through what was actually said today. Mr. Mnguni, thank you so much for your time. So, I mean, it's been a long time coming. This bill was actually, not bill, I beg your pardon, there's a landmark judgment in 2020, and it seems as if time is running out. 2024 is around the corner.
Time is running out, and that is why various civil society organizations have come, really, one, to build consensus on what we mean by electoral reforms, secondly, to say what is the nature of campaign that we need to do. And as we launch today, we are saying it needs to be a grassroots-oriented campaign. It must be a mass education campaign, exactly what electoral reforms are and why this electoral amendment bill is a fraud, and that Parliament is once again caught napping or sleepwalking in such an important moment, in a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to redefine our electoral system, to make it as accountable as possible, to localize it so that people actually vote for representatives who hail from their communities. Unlike currently what happens, you vote for a political party, it deploys to parliament, and then people are given constituencies. And what we have seen is that some people have constituencies in provinces where they do not come from, they don't speak the language that is spoken in those constituencies. So the entire thing has become illogical and unworkable in terms of reviving and revitalizing our democracy. As you have already shared with the viewers, is that the minister only appointed the Ministerial Advisory Committee in 2021. So there was a 6-month period where nothing happened. By the way, this is not Parliament's bill. This is the minister's bill. It's the minister who was presented with a report with two views, and he decided to go with the minority view. And
just take us through those, just for the benefit of the viewers. What is the minority view and what is the majority view? Well,
the minority view, which was supported by, fewer members of the advisory committee. So the committee had about 8 people. And once it came to voting, the IEC's commissioner, Dr. Nomsa Masuku, absented herself from voting. And so then you had a 4-3 split in terms of the vote. The minority report was basically saying independent candidates can participate, but the constituency will be a province, which means if you are an independent candidate and you are in KwaZulu-Natal, you must fight for votes in Kokstad as much as you'll fight for them in Manguzi. Already that becomes unworkable because independent candidates, first of all, their war chest to fight the election will be much more smaller compared to, to political parties. The second part was around an issue of cooling off periods, whether if you've left a political party, what should happen to you in terms of, being able to run as an independent candidate. But the other part was around this issue of signatures, the threshold. What would it take for independent candidates? It was just too high. Of course, in the revised bill, after the public participation process that was opened again in August, some changes have been made and tweaked, but fundamentally, the difference is that the majority view was now saying, let us have two different lists. Let us have a constituency list as we have in local government. 50% of the parliamentarians must come from 200 demarcated constituencies in the country, and 50% must come from what is called a proportional representation list, which is compensatory. Of course, when we held the electoral reform in Daba, a number of the participants from over 50 different organizations last month said that no, let us argue and advocate for 300 directly elected members, and therefore make sure that 100 come from a proportional representation list. And that will also avoid what we call the discarding of votes for independent candidates in the minority view. Because what happens is that if you need 30,000 votes to earn a seat, the political party will be able to earn as many seats given how many votes it has. But if an independent candidate has received 300,000 votes, the 270,000 votes will be simply disposed.
Not even discarded, it could actually be shared amongst other political parties, which is not fair.
Well, in the technical calculation, that's what it becomes, is that they get discarded, they go nowhere in terms of, what the independent candidate decides about them, and then that leaves the scope. So that means 270,000 people who have expressed themselves against whatever else was in the menu, their views will not find expression in the proportional, making sure that the outcome is quite proportional. And that's part of the problem. So the problems are many, but I think the point we are making today is, yes, there are technical conversations, but there is the political issue where the vote is no longer going to be equal. The vote is no longer going to result in a proportional outcome.
Look, and I wish we had more time, Mr. Mnguni, to actually talk about this, but we've run out of time, Flo. But I think just to also highlight that it's quite concerning that if this bill is actually passed, Flo, the IEC might not have enough time to actually prepare for the 2024 elections. And, the resounding sentiments in this launch today was that it might actually jeopardize the credibility of the 2024 national elections. This was the same sentiments that was shared by the IEC CEO, Mr. Saima Mabolo, last month at the electoral reform in Daba. So this is quite concerning, Flo. Of course, this bill is before Parliament, and these civil society organizations are asking for President Cyril Ramaphosa not to sign the bill, and of course, members of Parliament to not sign the bill into law, Flo.
All right, seems like quite a complicated issue going on there, and certainly one that we'll certainly have to iron out here on SABC News. Many thanks to you, Natasha Phiri, covering that for us, as Defend Our Democracy is launching a campaign for credible and what they call meaningful electoral reform.